Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Deku discovers that his father is All Might, the movie. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic Hataku 101, link is in the description, also subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's begin the video. I love my fans, but this is too much. That was the day Izuku Midoriya met All Might. All Might was as cool as he was in the film he watched every day as a kid. His tall stature, muscles that seemed to terrify, and the fearless grin. The one feature Izuku absolutely loved, how his smile never left his face even in the most difficult times. His lifelong hero, the one he admired, the one he wished to be like, was flying in the air. It wouldn't have been so scary if he had been on the ground. He screamed his lungs off as he felt the air brushing against his skin violently. "If I let go now I'll die," he protested. All Might see his point. "Oh, right." He protectively placed a hand on his back, making sure he didn't fall. A cough led his mouth with a single drop of blood. It was a warning he didn't have much time. Once All Might got to the ground safely, he sensed something odd about the kid trying to catch his breath from the fear of going up so high. He couldn't place his finger on it. "I best be leaving," All Might turned, walking towards the edge of the building. Izuku hollered, "Wait, you can't leave yet, I have a question. I have a really tight schedule." His eyes had a certain thing that reminded All Might of himself. Actually, it looked as if he was standing in front of the mirror. Although the kid in front of him had vibrant green hair and he had blonde golden locks, he had this feeling they were connected. The next thing Izuku Midoriya said gave it all away. "Is it possible to become a hero even if I don't have a quirk?" He couldn't hold it in any longer, his heroic all intimidating form retreated into his more skinny body. Izuku screamed in surprise, "Where's All Might? Why you're an imposter." Here began the whole talk about how All Might was just like a guy sucking it in at the pool deck. Even so, Izuku Midoriya began to whisper to himself that it wasn't true. Wins the day with a fearless smile. Izuku concluded his speech. All Might sighed, "I can assure you there's plenty of fear in that smile." He explained his tragedies of battle, showed him the wound permanently on his skin. Being a hero wasn't all that it was cracked up to be yet, Izuku still insisted on becoming a hero, even if he was quirkless. Even after All Might shared his opinion on a quirkless man becoming a hero, Izuku still ran to try to help his classmate from the sludge monster. That was something he recognized. All true heroes ran a danger, although it was a losing battle. That's what true courage was. When Izuku and All Might met again, he repeated his answer, "No, I don't think a quirkless boy like you can become a hero." His eyes glanced at Isaacus, whose smile disappeared, and eyes began to water. And a big one at that, "I want to give you my power." All Might began to explain what his quirk truly was, and what it did. The more he explained the more Izuku's eyes lightened up. All Might felt it in his gut, he knew this boy, this future hero, would be the one to inherit his power. "Do you want my power?" "Yes sir." Izuku Midoriya answered without hesitation. All Might nodded, "It'll be hard training, but I'm sure you." All Might's eyes widened a bit, after all this time he hadn't asked what the kid's name was. "What's your name, kid?" "My name is Izuku Midoriya." The cold shiver ran down All Might's spine. That was the name Inko chose a long time ago for his illegitimate son. All Might stood and stared at the boy before him now, That's why he felt so attracted to this boy, that's why he saw himself in him. Boy, did he look like his mother. "All Might?" Izuku questioned. He snapped out of it, "We begin training tomorrow. Come to the beach with your best attitude." He would have to decide whether to reveal his new discovery to Izuku or not. So many questions rushed through his head. He thought Inko, Izuku's mother, lost a child. If that was true, why was he standing in front of him right now? From Isaacus' reaction, it seemed as if he didn't know All Might was his father. Inko didn't tell him, there must be a reason. Therefore, until further notice, he would keep his mouth shut and admire his once little boy growing up. And tomorrow it was. The new day arose with new possibilities. Izuku left his house saying goodbye to his mother and headed towards the beach where the almost impossible waited for him. "We have to get your body in shape to be able to withstand my power." All Might explained, "You will have to clean this beach." He gave a certain date it had to be done, like all assignments. Izuku was first overwhelmed by the awful task given to him. His fearful expression turned into a determined one. Even so, he began to clean the beach up. Every day he would come to the beach to clean, All Might hollering at him motivational quotes or phrases, or plain on telling him to stop being lazy and pull harder or run faster. It was a difficult process, but even more, it was stressful. The due date of this assignment only got closer and closer. He soon realized the garbage was too much, with the due date being tomorrow, he would have to stay at the beach all day. So that's what he did, he withstood the challenge and managed to take everything away from the sand and onto concrete cement. He gave a blood-curdling yell in celebration of completing the almost impossible task. All Might couldn't be prouder. He was sure Izuku was the right choice. It was his son after all. All Might plucked a strand of his hair, now eat this. What Izuku was utterly confused. All Might waved it in his face, in order to inherit my power you need my DNA. Wait. Izuku questioned, All Might. He dropped the strand of hair and wrapped his hand around Isaacus. The red veins appeared on All Might's forearm, as well as Isaacus. He gasped, as he felt the power of One for All surge into him. It was overwhelming, as All Might said it would be. Anyone who didn't have physical training would collapse of the strain. All Might felt the opposite. He felt the energy that kept a tight feeling in his chest, released, and let him go free. Slowly, he removed his hand from Isaacus. Izuku examined his hand, was All Might's power really his? He couldn't believe it. He admired this man so much, and to inherit his power was amazing. Now, you will have to learn control your power, so maybe we could test run it. The yell was given off by Izuku, I'm late for the exams. He turned tail and ran, thank you so much All Might, I'll see you later. Bye, and good luck. All Might yelled back. He saw his pupil run off into the city. All Might felt a pain in his chest. He missed so many years with Izuku. He missed his baby years up to being in his awkward teen years, which was still in progress. A bit of anger boiled in his blood, he was to talk to Inko as soon as he could. He jumped into the everlasting sky, his mission not to fight, but to investigate. All Might gracefully landed on the street, he had business to do before he attended UA Academy as a teacher. His eyes looked around the empty street. If he remembered correctly, the house near the left corner, third to last. He took brave steps towards it. His brave steps slowly turned into shaky ones. The last time I talked to Inko was a long time ago. 15 years at least, as old as Izuku. His hand was inches away from knocking on the door. Sure, he was the symbol of peace, the brave and strong and first-ranked hero, but he too had his fears. This lady was one of them. His knuckles touched the wooden door, knocking once, knocking twice. The anxious seconds that passed seemed like eternity. Soon enough, sooner than All Might would like, the door opened. The usual reaction to be in the presence of such a figure as himself was extreme excitement. For a lady like Inko, well, she was an exception. Ashinori Yagi? Inko questioned. All Might responded, Midoriya Inko. There was an awkward silence that fell upon the two before Inko's soft innocent face turned into a nasty expression. After all this time you dare show your face here, after all we've been through, do you still? Whoa. All Might tried to calm her down, I'm not here for that. Actually, I'm here regarding our son. Her features sank. Somehow, someway, All Might had discovered her secret. Yes, everyone has secrets, from tiny crushes to life-changing ones. How are you so sure he's yours? I did marry another man, Yagi. He's quirkless, Inko. She frowned, I guess that's a huge giveaway. Wait. How do you know about this? Did you happen to meet Izuku? Yes, he nodded, I met him a month ago. Don't tell me. All Might interrupted, I gave him the power he should have had a long time ago. You gave him One for All. Inko's stomach felt like it twisted into knots. He did want to become a hero, even when he was quirkless, All Might explain his reason to do so. Inko sighed and looked around, come on, in that form is probably stressing your body out more than is healthy. All Might stepped into her house. It wasn't the house he first met her in, no, this house was from her deceased husband. The only reason he knew where she lived was because of Izuku. Izuku had accidentally shown him where he lived, not that it was a bad thing. Once inside, steam had invaded the clean house. Inko batted the steam away from her. When it cleared, there stood a no longer muscular or heroic-looking man. Inko looked at him, he had definitely aged in the years she had not seen him. So this is where you have been for the past years? All Might looked around at the family-friendly house. Inko kept her frown on her face, I haven't been hiding from you, Yagi. You were just too busy with your hero business. That was one issue Inko had with him. There were many reasons why their relationship hadn't worked out. At first, the two lovebirds couldn't take their hands off each other, but soon it had evolved to only yelling and fighting. It was strange how they had lived. They weren't even married, yet it seemed as if it was so. When All Might had found out about Inko being pregnant with his child, he did his best to be with her, but no matter how bad someone wants something, sometimes it just doesn't work out. I thought you lost a baby, All Might or Yagi had no hesitation in discussing what was on his mind. Inko's eyes wouldn't dare look at him, I lied. But why? Unlike Inko, All Might couldn't stop looking at her. Why didn't you tell me? I missed so much from his life, your career. Your career as a hero just started. I couldn't ruin that for you. I was going to tell you, but you only became more popular, and locating you was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. She raised her voice, you didn't help, either. All Might saw her point. He didn't exactly make it easier for her. Women were always right, even when they were wrong, they somehow ended up right. He sighed heavily, can I ask why you didn't tell him? Inko gave him a nod, I didn't want Izuku to show off that his father was All Might, only to end up quirkless. Do you know how humiliated he would have been? Besides that, I would never get to live like a normal person. Izuku, and I would always be swarmed with people and their questions. You are a popular hero after all. I'm not, heck. You're the symbol of peace. Her eyes were clearly starting to water, and just for a second, he saw Izuku standing there instead of Inko. All Might placed a hand on her shoulder. I can't ask you to forgive me. I guess we both messed up. Inko sighed, yeah. So can I tell him? All Might asked. He didn't need to ask, he could just say it to Izuku, but that would make his mother look like the bad guy, and that's the last thing he wanted Izuku to look at his mother as. He wasn't just the #1 hero, but the #1 gentleman as well. Inko's lips finally did something he didn't expect to ever witness ever again. She smiled, yes, but I want you to tell him in front of me, Yagi. Right? All Might agreed to her terms. I just knew him for a month, but Inko, you raised him well. She lightly laughed, looking at All Might without shame. Would you like to stay for dinner? All Might's heart skipped a beat. I would love to, but I have a job as a teacher at UA Academy. Oh, that's where Izuku signed up. Inko recalled. That's correct, I'm sure your son, our son, will make it in with no problem. I think so too. With that, they said their goodbyes and set up a date where they would reveal who Izuku's father really was. When that day came, All Might promised he would stay for dinner. Instead of shaky steps, All Might walked out with confident strides. His long unsolved problem had solved itself in minutes. He should have done this long ago. He realized he also should hurry up, for he was late to his first day as a staff member. Like father, like son. In his muscular form, All Might launched into the air. Of course, he didn't go across the city without solving some crimes. And the big ones are worth 0 points. Present Mick voice roared across the arena. So all Izuku had to do was avoid the big robots. Didn't seem like much of a problem. That wasn't until he realized he had no points, and even worse, the cute girl, Achako Uraraka, had gotten herself stuck with one of the big robots behind her. He turned the other way, but a part of him couldn't ignore the helpless girl. He turned on his heels and flew into the sky like All Might did. He felt the power surge all around him. It was impossible to control. His fist met the steel metal of the robot, smashing it into pieces. No one could believe it. What a quirk he had. Last time Kitsuki remembered, Izuku didn't have a quirk. So why? Izuku fell from the sky, getting slapped across the face by Achako. She then released him, his body softly landing on the ground. Her stomach went in circles, making her puke her lunch out. Izuku's arms and legs burned so badly, but nothing happened. No broken arm or legs, nothing besides a painful feeling. He quickly realized he had no points whatsoever. He had to get one, at least one. And now folks, it is over. Present Mick announced. The overwhelming feeling of failing got to Izuku, making him swoon and faint from his own fear. There was whispering about how strong Izuku was. He didn't look like he would contain that much power. Unlike the others who were criticizing Izuku Midoriya, Tenya Iida couldn't help but admire and envy the sacrifice Izuku made to save that girl. The nurse came in, showing off her old lady's kindness, and smiled. Although nothing was broken, Izuku was banged up pretty good. With just a kiss, he was fixed back up. Anyone else hurt? 1 week passed, and Izuku was anxious to get his letter. Did he get accepted into the UA high school? Or did he fail tremendously? According to his own results, he did pretty badly in both the written and physical exam. How could he enter the UA? Whatever happens, I still think you're pretty cool. His mother automatically sensed his nervousness. Izuku said nothing as his mother left for the mail. She came back yelling her head off in excitement. Izuku, it's here, it's here. The UA letter. Izuku took it to his room and sat on a chair, the envelope on the desktop. All he could do was stare at it, too nervous to open it. With sudden confidence, he ripped open the envelope. He questioned why All Might was there only to get his question answered. He was a part of the staff, neat. Even more so, when it was announced how the cute girl tried to give him some of her points, but there was no need, for he, on his own, was accepted in the high school of his dreams. The world seemed to look brighter than ever. His mom waited anxiously outside. Izuku's smile gave it all away. He was accepted. Right when Izuku received his acceptance letter, All Might got in touch with him again. Hi All Might. He yelled. All Might winced at the sudden volume. Too loud kid. 2 onlookers yelled in excitement upon hearing the hero's name. Izuku quickly stated it was a false alarm. The onlookers' excitement was crushed. Seeing the potential danger was over, All Might began to explain to Izuku how he didn't interfere with his acceptance at UA. You did that all on your own, he concluded. Oh, thanks for telling me. I'm so glad to hear that. His smile grew upon his face. I didn't know you're going to be a teacher. I was wondering what brought you here all of a sudden. Everyone knows your agency is at this kid. His son really did know everything about him. Izuku was the biggest fanboy he knew, getting creepy. Izuku's smile turned into a frown. Right. All Might quickly explained that he was offered the job and it seemed like an excellent way to find a successor. Izuku's smile did not appear again. He was looking for someone strong, someone with a quirk, not someone like himself. Their quirk, it was weird to handle. Izuku recalled the events that took place earlier in the day. All Might's eyes turned to him, weird in what way? He was expecting some broken bones or complete wreckage of his body. Izuku explained, it felt so painful. Like someone beat me to a pulp. It was overwhelming. You learn to manage it in time, All Might answered. No broken bones or anything. Just a bunch of bruises. Since Izuku had some of his DNA, he presumed the quirk would be easier to control than with any other person. He picked up 2 cans of spray paint, you'll just have to learn to control it. His heroic form returned to him. His mighty fist crushed the 2 cans. The onlookers gasped, it really is All Might. Where did he come from? All Might blew his own cover. Crap, and now we run. All Might ran along the beach, the young Midoriya alongside him. He had lots to learn before the school year started. Not physically, but mentally too. One of that being that no other than All Might was his dad. It was now April and the start of his school year. You didn't just pack action figures, did you? Inko worriedly said. Her only child was growing up, she couldn't help but worry. After a few goodbyes and a lot of yes mom and no moms later, he made it at the entrance to his new school. Izuku nervously, but with a hurry, walked inside of the school, Class 1 to Class 1A. Where is it? The high school he dreamed so badly of, he finally could call his school. UA was amazing in every way. From the decorations outside and the huge doors inside to the building itself. What was with these doors anyways? Did a giant use it to occupy the UA? This was it. Behind these doors were the future heroes. His mind couldn't help but go back to Kitsuki and Tenya. Maybe they were put in a different classroom. Pushing through his nervousness, he opened it. He was met with an angry Tenya yelling at Kitsuki to remove his legs from the desk. What? Did your old school shove a stick up your ass or were you born with it? The mean remark came from the one and only Kitsuki. Tenya was choking on his words. Deciding they met off on the wrong foot, Tenya reintroduced himself, trying to befriend the hothead, Kitsuki. Once he had told Kitsuki the school he came from, Kitsuki blew up, so you must think you're better than me. I'm going to have fun tearing you a new one. Tenya gasped, you would threaten me, your own classmate, are you sure you're in the right place? Everything all of a sudden went silent, everyone's heads turning towards the door where Izuku stood. He managed to avoid everyone's eyes by looking at the roof, high. Tenya rushed towards him, greeting Izuku in the proper manner. When he told his name, Izuku nervously smiled, explaining he already knew who he was. Izuku then proceeded to introduce himself to him. Tenya spoke the words he was hoping to say to Izuku Midoriya when they met. It was about the entrance exam. It was amazing to him how Izuku had figured out there was more to the exam. Although, all Izuku did was trust his instincts. I recognize that messed up hair. Izuku met a cute girl. Achako Uraraka. He didn't pay any attention at all when she spoke about the entrance exam. All he could do was gaga at how good she looked in her uniform. He tried to speak only to have his face turn as pink as a pig. The teacher showed up in the class in a sleeping bag. They soon learned his name was Shota Izawa. Everyone seemed to be shocked by the news that the man who looked worn out like an old rag was a teacher. He pulled something out of the sleeping bag he always seemed to carry, put it on, and headed outside. The students soon learned it was a fitness test, testing their quirks. Weren't they going to miss orientation? Here in the UA we're not tethered to traditions, that means I can run my class as I see fit, Shota meant serious business. Everyone gasped again, but when he told them that whoever scored last place would be kicked out of school, everyone protested. Eventually the teacher won, the adult always did, enough talking, let the games begin. So it began, first up was the 50-yard meter dash. The first two were Tenya and Tsu, the frog-like girl. Tenya was certainly in his element. Those pipes on his calves were surely meant for speed. Izuku saw Achako and another classmate go next, then another two which included a pink-skinned girl. He really had to learn their names soon. He heard Shota call him from afar. He was next. As Izuku walked to the starting line, he could feel his heart hit against his ribsage. To make matters worse, he was paired up with Kitsuki. He then remembered his quirk. He had a quirk now. All he needed to do was focus on how much power he put in his legs. Ready? The machine called. Izuku calmed his breathing. It shouldn't be too hard, all he had to do was lower the wattage. In order to avoid the egg from exploding, he had to lower the wattage from the microwave. That's all he had to do. Set. He could do this. He just needed to concentrate. He couldn't be last. He refused to be. He had worked so hard to come to this school and trained to become a hero. Nothing was going to stop him from his dream. Nothing. Go. His legs felt the intense power manifest. His blood boiled with power. In the very second the go was spoken, Izuku leaped into the air, landing in the middle, then dashing to the end. He traveled so fast that he managed to match up with Kitsuki. As he reached the end he had a hard time trying to stop himself from falling onto his face. Pain struck Izuku's legs. He felt as if he couldn't stand anymore. His legs trembled as they struggled to keep his body upright. Even more so when he noticed some eyes that wouldn't look away from him. He let out an awkward smile. The next test began. It was the grip strength test. All Izuku had to do was squeeze the handle as hard as he could. He inhaled and exhaled, he could do this. Again, all he had to do was keep the egg from blowing up. Izuku squished the handle of machine. At first electricity sparked as if it was trying to defend itself, then the handle broke into pieces. Izuku's eyes widened, what happened to his self-control? A boy with dark brown hair and tape coming from his elbows quickly took notice of Izuku's power. Whoa. You broke it. You're a beast. A smaller boy with what seemed like dark grapes on his head agreed, yeah. He couldn't help that his face was starting to turn colors. He wasn't really all that. A surge of pain went through his hand. He winced, his eyes traveling to his palm. The palm side of his hand was all sorts of colors, ranging from green to black. The pain was worse than getting beaten up. The backlash of his power was a bunch of bruises, it wasn't too bad. Yeah, he could deal with bruises. Somewhere nearby, Kitsuki's blood boiled. Every time that bug was praised, or even looked at in amazement, he couldn't help but feel anger bottled up inside him. What did that quirkless loser do to himself? He stood waiting for his turn in test 3. Standing long jump. The students ahead of them got past this obstacle in a breeze. It was a naval laser, Kitsuki, and then him. He did a similar movement as he did for the 50-meter dash. For some reason, using one for all with his legs was much easier than using it with his arms. Izuku launched himself into the air. The air seemed to move with him as he flew over the obstacle. When his feet touched the floor another horrifying burst of pain went up his legs. It was the worst one yet. He fell to the ground, landing on his butt. His legs didn't work anymore. With extreme difficulty, he did his best to get out of the way. Sidestep test was also about speed, which seemed as if that was one of the things Izuku lacked, but even so, he stressed his legs to go back and forth using the quirk. He had concluded that the more he used his quirk, the more his body would get used to it. Seeing Minoru Mineta, the boy who had balls for hair, conquer this test was astonishing. He bounced back and forth faster than anyone could. Up next was the ball throw. It was impressive to see some people throw a ball. An example would be Achako. Using her quirk, she got an infinity on her score. That's insane, how is that even possible? Izuku heard a classmate say. Soon enough it was his turn. Shota gave him the ball, and he steadily walked up. Shota was uneasy about the green-haired boy. All Might has given his strength to a kid with wild goals. It was a dangerous combination Shota didn't like. A boy like that should never have been able to come to the UA. Izuku calmed himself. He didn't want to give it his all or nothing, like he has been doing. That would raise suspicion, and that's the second to last thing he wanted. The last thing he wanted was to fail and get kicked out of the school he had worked so hard to get in. He still couldn't figure out the wattage, hence the simile of comparing his power like an egg in a microwave, but he figured out how to pour his power where he wanted it. That would be enough for him. He pulled his arm back and threw the ball. The ball flew across the sky faster than an aeroplane. It went far, a little more than the end of the field. Shota showed his students the score. It was insane. No way, Midoriya. What the hell? Your quirk has to be strength, ain't it? He threw it way over 700 meters. Whoa, that was so cool. It appears his arm is bruised now just like in the exam. His quirk is very odd. It wasn't a very pretty throw. Izuku felt the same pain he had been feeling all day. Looking down, his arm was as black and blue as his hand. His body was still rejecting the quirk given to him. Shota eyed the boy, you have no control over your power, do you? Izuku felt a chill go down his spine. His eyes looked at him, spotting the goggles from his neck, Eraserhead. The name Eraserhead echoed in the crowd of students. Some students had a hard time remembering him, while others knew exactly who he was. All Might watched from a corner. He knew Shota, or Eraserhead, would pester his pupils sooner or later. He didn't expect it to be this soon. All Might knew Eraserhead wasn't much of a media guy, which is why some people recalled him, and others didn't. He hated heroes like All Might that looked good in the spotlight. Shota's scarf reached for Izuku, pulling him only inches away from him, you would only be a problem in battle. You have the same reckless passion, similar to another overzealous hero I know. One who saved 1,000 people by himself and became a legend. Now it was obvious as daylight he knew about All Might's power. Especially with that drive, you'll cause problems to the city and its citizens and yourself. He was suggesting the intense bruises that cover almost every single spot on his arm. Are you expecting others to come save you? Are you going to rely on others? With that uncontrolled power, you will become the problem. Izuku's eyebrows creased in on themselves. He dared not to look at Shota again. Everything he said was right. He had no control, but he looked upwards, he would definitely gain it. He has to work way harder than everyone here to succeed. All Might couldn't be prouder. He knew Izuku did a good job. Although he could not control how much power he put in his punch, he could control where he put it in. To All Might at least, that was incredible. His son was something else. When did he get so cool? Alright, Shota spoke, calling the next person up. Itsuki was having a hard time swallowing how Izuku did so well on almost all the tests. His eyes were wide, and his irises as small as could be. His jaw touched the floor, and his eyebrows creased on his forehead. No way, no way, no way. He could no longer withstand it. What the hell was that? He recalled Izuku having no quirk. If he did, he would have gotten it when they were kids. It was impossible. In anger, his hands blew up tiny explosions here and there. His body dashed at Izuku. Deku, you bastard, tell me how you're doing this or you're dead. Before Kitsuki could do anything to Izuku, Eraserhead stopped him with his scarf. He warned him to stand down. You're wasting my time now. Whoever's next can stand up. Izuku cautiously went around the raging Kitsuki. He was careful to avoid him. Although with so much power, he still feared his bully. Is your arm okay? Yeah, sure it is. Izuku responded. Kitsuki frowned. He was a little bug he could crush, but ever since the exam something happened. No, even if he did something to make himself stronger, he still remained an annoying bug, which he could easily step on. The next tests were all doable without his quirk, ranging from sit-ups to toe touches. After all the hard work, he collapsed onto the ground, everything of his was throbbing. It hurt so much. Especially the bruises that ran along his arms and legs. The results were now in. I ranked you all from best to worse. He pulled up the list. Izuku could not look up at the board, it was nerve-wracking. He slowly opened his eyes to see he was in the top 10. His eyes widened, as well as his smile. No way. He had passed, he wouldn't go home. And, I was lying. No one's going home. Shota clicked the button to make the list disappear. That was just a rational deception, to make sure you gave it your all in the tests. Izuku couldn't believe it. He had tried so hard, to the point that his cover could have been blown. How didn't the rest of you figure that out? I'm sorry, I think I should have said something. That was it was done. No more tests or anything. They were all done for the day. Izuku was relieved, he thought it would go on forever. Shota handed Izuku a piece of paper. Midoriya, take this and go have the old lady fix you up. Things are going to be tougher tomorrow when your actual training begins. Izuku saw Shota beginning to leave. Izuku hid his small smile, he managed to make it through the day. Although he almost passed out, he did it. He started out in a good spot, but someday he would make it to number 1. He would have to keep on learning if he wanted his dream to come true. Izawa, that was a rotten move. All Might spotted the teacher pass by. How dare he treat his son like that? Shota, hearing his name, turned to face All Might, so you were watching. No talk shows today. All Might continued to argue, telling him he knew that he wasn't a nice guy. Last year he kicked out a whole class. He had no problem kicking students out. He could have kicked out Midoriya if he wanted to. That means you see the same potential in him as I do. What is this all about? It seems as if you've been in this corner the whole time, Shota snickered. All Might winced at Shota's statement. It's a little early for you to be playing favorites. All Might couldn't help it. Izuku Midoriya was his son after all. His pupil had inherited his power. How could he not favorite him, even just a little? Shota continued his walk to wherever he had to be. All Might could see that Shota was a nice guy in his strange way, but clearly, we're gonna have a problem. Izuku dreadfully walked out of the school. He visited the nurse's office as told, and he had learned that the nurse's power used up energy in order to heal. No wonder he was beat. Tenya managed to catch up with him. How's your arm? It's fine now thanks to the recovery girl. Tenya started to speak about how unfit Shota was to be a teacher, but he trusted the school's decision. Although, to him, lying was downright immoral. Izuku smiled. At first he thought Tenya was pretty scary, but that wasn't it. He was just very serious about school. A hey was heard from behind them. Achako came running. Wait up you two. Are you going to the station? I'll join you guys. It was her again. You're the Infinity Girl, Tenya recalled. She nodded. I'm Achako Uraraka. You're Tenya Iida, and your name is Deku, right? Midoriya. Deku of all places, he thought that nickname would have vanished here. Yeah, that's what Bakugo called you. During the fitness testing, right? Izuku looked everywhere, but in her eyes, well, actually my name is Izuku Midoriya. Deku is a nickname he used to tease me. That's sportsmanlike. Achako awkwardly smiled. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what, I actually like it. It can make a great hero name. Plus I think it sounds cute. He became red again. Deku it is. Then you started to question his decision-making, but a cute girl was a cute girl. He looked away from her, placing his hands to his face. How embarrassing. He gave an awkward giggle. Izuku had survived his first day in high school. Even though he almost did die, at least he was making some new friends. That had to be a good thing, right All Might? Izuku woke up, looking at the clock. He was at the nurse's office. Memories rushed to his skull. Last time he remembered, he just finished his challenge. He beat Kitsuki and Tanaya back at the building with the help of a Chaco. He remembered the confusion and fear lurking in Kitsuki's eyes before he passed out. He remembered that pain of using his quirk. He remembered way too much. Looking back at the clock, he noticed it was late afternoon. He missed all his afternoon classes. Great. Rise and shine, honey. Recovery girl came out of nowhere. Izuku walked along the halls of UA High, returning to his class. His backpack and clothes were still there, not to mention he was still in his costume, which needed serious repair. He was to come back to the nurse's office tomorrow. That reminded him, Mr. Izawa would definitely choke him with his scarf. He warned him about his own quirk. Izuku made it to his class. Opening the door, he was greeted by his fellow classmates. Hey, it's Midoriya. Good to see you back, super. People started to come from all angles, swarming him. A guy with red pointy hair spoke. I don't know what you were saying back at that match, but you were all fired up, huh? Another boy with flat dark brown hair said, I can't believe you held your own against Bakugo. He's super strong. You did a great job dodging. A pink girl seemed way too excited. You guys got all turned up in the first match, so neither of us held back in our round either. A tall guy towered over Izuku. You weren't elegant, but I suppose. The pink girl hopped up and down. Your dodging was like, whoa. Izuku couldn't believe his ears. Was he getting praised? He looked at them all. Hey, I'm Ijiru Kirishima, and we've been going over training results while you were in recovery. He pointed to a taller, lankier student. He started, hi, I'm Hantasiro. More importantly, I'm Yuga. It seemed as if the fancy blonde boy couldn't finish his sentences. Hi, I'm Ina Shido, and I just gotta say your dodging was awesome. She couldn't stop moving. It was as if she was incapable of doing so. Another smaller girl appeared behind her. I'm Tsuyu Asui, but please, call me Tsu. Hey Sato. The tall figure introduced himself. Hey guys, and my name is Mineta. A little guy, with balls for hair, hopped into the air. The chatter continued. This was all new for someone like Izuku. He had never been swarmed with this many people. In his old school, they mostly made fun of him for not having a quirk. Here, it seemed that they admired him. It was such a change. He loved the UA. Ugh, so noisy, the bird boy Fumikage complained. He was soon pestered by Tenya, who yelled at him to get off the desk. Kayaka tried to calm him down, but it didn't seem to work at all. It seemed it only encouraged him to keep on rambling about how disrespectful it was to use desks as chairs. Tenya never relaxed. It wasn't in his blood. Denki and Ichako entered the room with some piles of books. Although Denki, the electricity guy, was trying to make a move on Ichako, she completely ignored him as soon as she spotted Izuku. She turned and jogged to him. Hey Deku. She said, why didn't she heal your injuries? Oh, well, it has to do with how much stamina I'm using, Izuku tried to explain. She questioned it more, stamina. Izuku quickly took notice of the empty chair where Kitsuki usually sat. You're Raka, where's Kakin? He ran down the stairs of the UA earlier. Kitsuki left high school. The other students tried to stop him, but it was no use, he wouldn't listen. Izuku ran to catch up with Kitsuki. He spotted him at the entrance and exit of the school. Kakin, wait up. Kitsuki turned his head. What? As if Izuku realized who he was talking to, he stopped. He hasn't told the secret to anyone, not even his mom. I have to tell you something. Maybe then you'll understand what's been going on. I wasn't hiding my quirk from you, it was given to me by someone else, but I can't tell you who I got it from, so don't ask. Sounds crazy, I know, it's like something out of a comic book. Only it's real, but the thing is I don't really have control over this power yet. I don't really know how to make it my own, but I'm trying. That's why I didn't want to use it against you in the exercise. In the end, it was the only way I had a chance at winning. Itsuki starts to tremble in anger. Izuku continued, I still have a lot to learn, I know that. That's why I'm here. You'll see, I will work until I have full control of this borrowed quirk, and I'll finally beat you with my own power. He immediately regretted his last sentence. He wasn't going to say that he would beat him, just say about the history of his quirk. How dumb do you think I am? Borrow power doesn't talk to me like I'm an idiot. You already made a fool out of me in that damn training exercise, so, did you come here to rub it in I lost, and to make matters worse it was to you. I came in first in the exam, but that's not enough. When I watched that ice guy, I realized I couldn't beat him in a head-to-head battle. Crap. I even agreed with what the girl said. Damn it. Damn it. damn it. He clenched his fists. Enjoy that win, Deku, you won't get another. I'm just getting started. Got that? I'm going to end up the #1 hero, no matter what. He stared at Izuku, and Izuku stared right back at him. Both viewed each other as rivals, no longer a bug or a bully. He turned and started to walk away. You'll never beat me again, you bastard, don't even try. Izuku relaxed once he saw Katsuki off. Boy, that was intense. The booming voice of All Might caught his attention. Surprisingly enough, he ran to Katsuki. Bakugo, I found you. He started to ramble on about how pride is important and whatnot. Katsuki wasn't going to have it. He told All Might, the All Might, to back off. Along with that, he also declared he would be more famous than him and walked along. All Might was caught off guard. Guess he was already over it. Man, being a teacher is hard. Izuku right then decided that he would keep chasing after Katsuki. The one who seemed so cool in his neighborhood in his child eyes. All Might turned to Midoriya. What did you say to Bakugo before I arrived so heroically? Nothing special. All Might leaned closer. I'm so curious. Why don't you tell me all the juicy details? Actually, I kinda forgot. Izuku answered, hoping that would convince him. All Might chuckled, he was as bad as lying as he was. Alright, my boy, go get your stuff and change, school is quite close to being over. The day was the day he was going to tell Izuku about him. It seemed like a bad day to do it, with Izuku's arm broken and all, but it's the day Inko chose. Izuku nodded, alright, see you later, All Might. Izuku turned heels and headed back into the building. Yes, see him soon indeed, sooner than he thought. Izuku's house was in his view. He was back home with a broken arm and several injuries. He wondered how his mom would react. He started to imagine it only to get the thought out of his head. Izuku was not looking forward to that. He sighed, taking out his key to unlock the door. The door opened, Izuku stepping into the house. He took his shoes off and found the sudden laughter in his house quite strange. His house was usually quiet, with an occasional sound of plates. He made it to his living room to see All Might in his non-heroic form and his mom cracking up. Young Midoriya. All Might noticed him. His mom gestured to All Might, I would like to introduce my friend. They started cracking up again. Anyways, this is Yogi Toshinori. He's more commonly known as All Might. Izuku didn't know, he couldn't understand. How did his mom know such a thing? Did she know about One for All too? How come she wasn't saying anything about his injury? She looked so happy. All Might got up as well, my boy, I have come to tell you something important. Really important. You might want to listen well, Izuku, his mom warned. He convinced me to let him do it, so I can't say anything. Before he speaks, I want you to know I had my reasons, and they were good ones. All Might cleared his throat. Izuku's eyes bounced back from his mom to All Might. What was going on? All Might start, my boy, well, you are my boy. His heart hit his own ribcage. What do you mean? I mean, what happened to your father? He asked first. Inko gave Yogi a weird stare. Izuku looked anywhere but at All Might. Oh well, he left us. He was ready, All Might could do this. If he could save thousands of people, he could tell Izuku that he was his father. I apologize. For what? Why, you're not the one that did it. Izuku was piecing the clues together, but he ignored it. He feared it would be true. All Might's and his mother's silence gave it away. If you're trying to tell me something, just say it. Izuku dear, his mother spoke, you see, I'm your dad. 1, 2, 3, 4, his heart couldn't stop. His heart rate was over the roof, and no. You can't be. I look nothing like you. Honey, I know it's a lot to take in, but he is your father, his mom was agreeing with him. So, it must be true. Daddy said in a shaky voice. He couldn't help but feel happiness engulfed by rage. Violently hot tears went down his cheeks. If that's the case, why didn't you come sooner? I idolized you all my life. Mom, why didn't you tell me? You said you have your reasons, but heck. I watched him through a computer screen and you said nothing. All Might tried to calm him. Young Midoriya, your mom had good reasons why she didn't. I didn't. No, shut up. He never imagined he would say this to someone like All Might. The day's pressure of getting beaten to a pulp by his own power, getting the courage to face Katsuki, then to top it off finding out the symbol of peace is his dad, it was all too much. He didn't know what to do. He stood there, letting the tears stream down his cheeks. All Might sighed, forcefully bringing him into a hug. Izuku, he rarely called him by his first name, I'm here to stay. Inko watched the two boys reunite. She imagined this moment a few times in her life, she just never thought it would come true. The guilt of hiding who his father was flew off her shoulders. She felt light now, light as a feather. Can you pass the salt please? All Might asked Izuku. Izuku grabbed him the salt, here. It was impossible to get used to. All this time, All Might was his dad. He was still in denial a little bit. It would make sense why the quirk wasn't entirely ruining his body. The food smelled and tasted excellent, but he just wasn't hungry. "Inko, your food is as great as ever," All Might complimented, scooping another handful in his mouth. Inko smiled, "Years of practice is all. I'm guessing you haven't had a home-cooked meal in a long time." "A very long time," he added. Izuku watched both of his parents, he still had trouble saying that chat, as if they were together all the 15 years they missed out. Izuku got up, "I'm sorry. I'm just not hungry. Have a good dinner." He picked up his plate, walking away. Izuku's sudden decision surprised the two adults. They looked at him, then at each other. Izuku placed his plate by the sink and headed to his room. It was all too much. Don't get it wrong, it was great having one's idol be one's dad, but the more he thought about his childhood the more anger and sadness boiled in him. All Might got up to chase after him, but Inko stopped him. "He has a lot on his mind, let him think it through. Then you can visit him." He slowly sat back down. Comprehending why Izuku was like this was as if trying to understand why the sun existed. He sighed, "Alright." Izuku went to his bed and laid there. Today's events kept turning up. From the exercise to talking with Kitsuki and the surprise that his dad was no other than All Might. All Might. Izuku remembered being a little kid, jumping up and down in his chair just to get to see that video one more time. He couldn't get his mind off All Might, for everywhere in his room were posters of him. Action figures too. Minutes later, he found himself snoozing off and on till finally his eyes shut. And that's when he learned the ABCs. Inko showed him pictures of when Izuku was small. All Might looked at the years he had missed. He never imagined himself as a dad, yet here was, being just that. Inko started to laugh, "This one." He saw a poster of you on the wall and tried copying the pose. "Doesn't he look adorable?" It was just that, Izuku copied his pose right next to the poster. It seemed as if All Might was there, but all it was a poster. Inko handed the picture to him, "You keep that one. You'll need at least one picture of your son when he was little." All Might chuckled, "Alright, Inko." He shoved the picture in his pockets for safekeeping. "Do you think I can check on him now?" Inko nodded, "Yes, but he might be asleep. I'm imagining the only reason he got angry was because of sleepiness. You'll soon see the teenagers are weird." He got up. "Tell me about it, I'm a teacher at a high school." Inko laughed lightly. All Might walked down the hall and knocked on Isuka's door. No one answered, so he went in. Just as Inko told him, he was asleep. All Might looked around the room. He was suddenly a little overwhelmed by how many All Might things took over the room. He would have thought Izuku would be happy to hear that they are related, hence all this. Inko again was probably right, it must have been tiredness from today or something. He picked up an All Might action figure. It looked old and used. He wondered how many years he had it. All Might placed the action figure next to Izuku's sleeping body. "See you at school, my boy." All Might left the room, heading back to Inko. "You were right, he was asleep." "Told you." Inko got up, placing the picture book away. She walked up to All Might, "It was nice of you to come." "Lucky to be here," All Might responded, "Thank you for everything, Inko." "You're welcome, Yagi." Saying farewell and All Might exited the house and wandered onto the streets. He turned back into his muscular form and launched himself into the air. Young Midoriya finally knew who his father was. He hoped everything would be normal or even better when he saw Izuku again. New questions rose in his head, should people know about his illegitimate son, or should it be kept a secret? He could think of a million reasons why it should be kept secret, but just one on why it shouldn't. That reason was because he was proud to be Izuku Midoriya Yagi's father. That was a mouthful of a name. He knew he had told Izuku that he would see him at school that day, but he had to confess. All Might couldn't stop thinking about his one and only son. The weekend was too long for All Might. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how fatherly things, like catching a baseball or going out for ice cream, he wanted to do with Izuku. All Might wondered what he would be doing on Sunday. Perhaps he could invite him somewhere, maybe to go fishing. No, definitely not, it wasn't his thing. Maybe to watch a movie. What, were they on a date? To play some ball? No. What did Izuku like doing? That's it. He would tell the boy he would get some extra lessons on how to control his quirk. A hero was what he aspired to be, and anything related to that he loved. He would make it a fun one. A fun lesson. He found out some neighbors of the two Midoriyas were starting to stare at him. It was unlikely for a figure like him to be in a suburban neighborhood after all. So this time, he made sure to go in his normal form. That way, he wouldn't catch the attention of anyone. He managed to make it to their doorstep and knocked on the familiar wooden door. He was met by Inko, "Yagi. I wasn't expecting you this early in the morning." She wore a robe, clearly not expecting any guests. All Might said, "I was hoping to talk to Izuku today." "Oh, I'll go get him for you. He still might be in his pajamas." Inko walked to her right, disappearing from sight. She called out to her son. She knew what All Might wanted. He simply wanted to get to know his son more. That made her happy in every way, and of course she would encourage it. She knocked on his door before entering. Izuku was sitting on his bed, yawning from being suddenly woken up. Yagi is outside waiting for you. Inko never seemed to call him All Might. Izuku almost choked on his own saliva. All Might here. Yes, your father seems as if he wants to do something with you, so look presentable. Inko walked away. Izuku still couldn't get used to that word. All Might was his father was All Might. He slapped on some clothes, ate an apple, and brushed his teeth. He wanted to pretend he didn't know why All Might showed up all of a sudden, but he did know. He saw his uneasy smile through the mirror. Slapping himself across the face, he replaced his expression to a more determined look. A day with All Me, a day with his dad. It couldn't be that bad, right? He greeted All Might at the door, slipping on his shoes. I'll see you later, Mom. Aye, sweetheart. Take care of him, Yagi. Inko said her goodbyes to both men. Izuku gave an awkward smile. He was old enough to take care of himself. All Might just laughed a little and waved goodbye. Once they left Izuku's house, everything was silent again. Young Midoriya. All Might began, I was thinking we could work on controlling your power a bit more. Just what he liked to do on weekends. Not that he minded or anything. Oh, well, okay. He didn't sound too happy. Was All Might doing this wrong? He didn't know how to be a father, or, we could do what you want to do. Working out is fine, All Might, Izuku assured him. He still couldn't bring himself to call him dad. That's great to hear, my boy. Guess he was doing this parenting thing right. All Might knew Izuku didn't have his license yet, so it was limited on what he could do. Thinking to himself, he had an idea. How about we practice your fighting skills? That didn't sound awful. He was in need of some new moves. Actually, that doesn't sound bad. All Might smiled. I know the perfect place too. After a few hours of small talk and asking where they were going, Izuku got his answer. They were walking in the woods, on a trail. The green leaves were growing from trees and the flowers were working their way up to bloom. The weather wasn't hot, but it wasn't cold. To him it felt perfect. All Might soon lead them away from the trail to a nice open spot. Izuku looked around with eyes full of wonder. All Might couldn't help but chuckle. I found this spot after one of my big wins with a villain. Izuku was all ears. All Might continue, being a hero is hard, I will admit, but it's worthwhile in the end. You get to protect all this. He motioned to the beautiful landscape where families probably had picnics before. That's why Izuku wanted to become a hero. He would make people feel safe, just like Almighty, who was dubbed a symbol of peace. Well, I can't wait to become a great hero. Izuku's eyes looked at All Might with inspiration. Like you. All Might smiled at his remark. I'm sure you'll be a fine hero. Now how about some training? Yes, sir. After a while of doing the same thing again and again, it started to get tiring. Izuku again tried to do the combination All Might ordered him to do. Left, right, uppercut, sidekick, and what was next? Although he had a quirk to work on, the body was the next, or perhaps the first main thing. The more fit he was, the more he could contain his quirk. Doing the move, Izuku slipped on wet grass and fell on his back. All Might looked down at him. I think we should take a break from here. All Might was always impressed by how much Izuku would push it. It was admirable, and just like him too. All Might extended a hand. Izuku took it, getting back on his feet. Did I at least get it right? All Might nodded. Yes, it would have been perfect without the fall. Izuku mentally cursed himself. He just had to slip. The next time he was to do it, he wasn't going to fall. He promised himself that. His stomach rumbled loudly. His eyes widened as his eyes slowly moved to look at All Might. All Might stood there with a blank face before laughing. The poor kid was hungry. Izuku turned colors. It wasn't his fault he was hungry, he had minutes to get ready and all he ate was an apple. Plus the exercise, well, that wasn't really helping. Okay, I invite you to eat some. All Might glanced at his phone. Lunch. I invite you to eat some lunch. Do you have a favorite place? I don't think. Izuku tried to remember somewhere he liked. I don't usually eat out. Usually my mom makes meals, or I eat lunch at the cafeteria. I see. Then I'll take you somewhere I like. Izuku couldn't help it, but fanboys are just fanboys. Although his father was, he was still All Might. He was going to see where All Might liked to eat. A grin grew on his lips. Okay. They were back in the city. People walked around. Some were hanging out with friends, while others were talking on a phone. There were businessmen who couldn't catch a break, and families who seemed to always smile. Out of all these categories, Izuku wondered what people saw them as. As father, son, or something else. All Might's eyes seemed to be trying to locate the establishment. It definitely was somewhere around here. He recalled his mentor, the person who gave him One for All, took him to this place. It automatically became his favorite because, like Izuku, he was once a fanboy too. He reached the door of the place, opening it. Ah, here it is. Izuku entered, his eyes looking around. It had a really simple design. There were tables along the wall and some tables randomly placed. There was a bar, but it didn't serve alcohol, it was just more seats. A lady came up to them, just two. Just two. All Might responded. She directed them to a table, introduced herself, and placed the menus on the table. She left them to decide on their meals. Although, All Might already knew what he wanted. Izuku looked at the menu. He didn't know why, but he was nervous. Perhaps it was because he mentally knew that All Might was sitting across from him, or that this man was his father. All Might quickly caught onto Izuku's nervousness. It wasn't hard to guess, the menu was shaking in his hands. What did you decide on, my boy? He never took my boy seriously, but now he did. Those words meant son. He looked at the options one more time before setting his menu down. What do you recommend? All Might started to name off food and why he liked it. Sometimes the food came with a story. He was a big shot after all, stories from his amazing fights were bound to happen. Izuku smiled and listened. All Might was just like an old man telling the stories of his younger days. Thinking it that way, Izuku couldn't help but laugh lightly. And that's why the noodle man almost beat me up. That crazy old man. All Might summoned up. Izuku giggled, wow, it seems you had some adventures. And you will too, soon. The lady came back, grabbing a tiny notebook from her apron, and what have you decided on today? All Might told what he wanted, and so did Izuku. She wrote down their orders and assured them their food would be ready soon. She walked away, leaving the two to talk again. This time, it was Izuku's turn to speak. He swirled his straw around, moving the ice cubes beneath. All Might. Yes, Midoriya. He answered. Izuku tried not to look him in the eyes. Sorry if you mind me asking, but why did you and mom break up? You seemed so happy when you came for dinner. Well, that was sooner than expected. He looked at Izuku with a shocked and awkward expression. Here it went, we were very happy, don't get me wrong. It's just, your mother and I didn't see eye to eye on things. We decided it would be best if we split up until we found out about you. Izuku's eyes were just as interested, as if All Might told his stories about his past fights. I tried staying with your mother for your sake, but with my career rising and gaining more popularity, your mother decided it was best to say that she lost a baby. She didn't want to hold me back, as she stated to you. Oh, but I still don't get it. Izuku said, if you two fought a lot, why do you get along now? I think we ended up being the kind of couple who are better off not living together, he answered. Just as he finished doing so, the waitress came back and placed their plates on the table. Enjoy. Izuku looked down at his food. He forgot about how hungry he was. It looked so good. He grabbed his utensils and started to eat. All Might chuckled and took a bite of his food too, good, as always. Soon enough, they both finished their meals. The bowls were completely empty, nothing was left behind from the two. Although Izuku looked like a copy of his mother, it seemed his personality and way of being came straight from him. He thought that was the perfect combination. His mother's good looks and his personality. Izuku then thanked him, that was delicious, thank you so much dad. It took a while for All Might to mentally process this, but when he did, the whole world seemed to stop. He was just called a dad. Izuku said dad. Izuku meant him. He just stood there trying to soak it in. His facial expression said it all. His blue eyes were wide, with eyebrows that were high on his forehead. His cheeks turned red, and he smiled, that famous All Might smile, of course my boy. That's when Izuku realized what he said. It's not like it was wrong. It was perfectly fine, since it was true. Either way, he couldn't help but freak out just a little. All Might was so happy that he left the money on the table and grabbed Izuku's wrist. Come on, son. I have a lot of things planned. Where are we going? They left the place, the door swinging back and forth. This was the time to celebrate. He called him dad. He was a dad. His smile wouldn't go away, like in his heroic form. The rest of the day, he spent with All Might. It ranged from going to do simple errands All Might had to run, to going fishing. He was unsure of the activity of fishing, for All Might didn't know how. Although he rejected the idea first, it became very fun. He made it much more exciting by not fishing with poles, but the old-fashioned way, by using one's hands. Dad, I see one. Izuku pointed out. All Might dashed to it, I got it. He managed to catch the slippery fish. Izuku laughed, causing All Might to chuckle. The fish flopped and hit All Might in the face. He was so startled that the whack from the fish's tail caused him to fall over. Izuku ran to him, are you okay? He was met with a laughing All Might. He slowly got up, his clothes soaked, guess it got away after all. Izuku giggled, yeah. You're all wet now. All Might had a twisted idea, oh, you find this funny? He then placed his hands in the water and splashed it onto Izuku. Izuku yelped, it was cold. Dad. He frowned. That didn't last long, for a smirk grew upon his face. He splashed back, that's a call on war. All Might declared. They started splashing the water, hitting each other with waves. It became a battle, chasing each other down. Izuku never imagined having a dad could be so fun. After some minutes, All Might collapsed onto land. Oh boy, I'm getting too old for that. Izuku laid right next to him. You're the symbol of peace, you're not supposed to feel old. All Might laughed. His kid was something. It was fun all today, he wished he could spend all his days like this. He had to make sure to thank Inko when he saw her. The question was why? It was simply because he wanted to thank her for bringing him into this world, who knew having a son would be awesome. That reminded him, are your clothes almost dried? Izuku answered. It was a bit damp, but not too bad. The setting sun wasn't as effective as it was a while ago. All Might slowly got up, okay, we better head back, or your mother will start worrying. Yeah. Izuku got up and followed All Might out of the lake area. He looked at All Might, the one he admired so much, the one he hoped to be like. He was his dad. Unlike a while ago, it wasn't a weight to carry. It was an amazing discovery. He smiled, exiting the area and going back into the city, where his mother lived somewhere in the suburb area. He had to admit, he never thought he would have spent a whole day with his hero when he was younger, yet here he was, happy as can be. As they walked through town, an alarm was heard. All Might turned to see a man yell, stop that thief. The thief ran down the sidewalk with a gun at hand and a large bag being held by the other. All Might looked at Izuku, as if asking for approval. Izuku grinned, go get him. He placed a grin on his face. He was missing some action today. All Might turned into his muscular form and faced the villain. He stopped in his tracks, looking at the familiar hero. All Might announced, I am here to stop you, villain. The villain shook in his boots, but either way, used his quirk of plant control to defend himself. This was no match for All Might. Izuku watched in glee. All Might was so cool. Too distracted by the amazing fight going on, Izuku never saw the men behind him, nor did he notice the alleyway only feet away from him. He felt rope around his body and a hand on his mouth. That way, he couldn't scream. He was pulled into an alley, where he was met by 3 guys. Told you this method would work, one said. His arms looked strange, it was, as if the rope around him wasn't a rope, it was stretched arms. His quirk was exaggerated stretching of his body. The other one scoffed, yeah, well, I'll give you credit. Stop chatting and get the money. Money? Oh no, were they expecting money from him? All he had was his school ID and some quarters. He bit the man's fingers and he screeched, you damn brat. His arms uncoiled around him. Izuku quickly got up, I don't have anything you're looking for. What, you don't have a single dime on you? One questioned. The stretchy guy frowned, this brats are lying. He's so excited. His arm stretched to wrap around him again. Izuku was ready for battle, he just had to calculate a way to win. If he ran, he would be caught by his arms anyways. He could try dodging, but again, those arms probably stop him. The best option was to engage in combat. His hands almost reached Izuku, but never touched him. His eyes widened, as well as the criminals. Trying to attack my boy? All Might stood there, hands on his hips and a wide stance. The criminals couldn't catch on. All Might punched one, what a terrible mistake. The guy went flying to the wall. The other 2 trembled, we didn't mean it. Either way, they also got punched. All of them were out cold. One punch from All Might and any regular criminal was on his butt. Izuku stood there, watching it all. It wasn't a long fight, not at all, but it was amazing how All Might was there right on time. The police came in, found others All Might. Sure did, those 3, he told them. They placed handcuffs on their wrists and hauled the low-life villains to the police cars. Izuku watched them go, wasn't that overkill? Overkill? All Might repeated, no one messes with my son. Izuku felt a certain joy wash over him. He was All Might's son. There was no denying that now. Izuku had a dad and All Might had a son. Izuku couldn't help but smile. Like the dad he was, All Might said, let's go home. Shall we, my boy? Yeah, Izuku's smile remained and the 2 heroes, or one to-be hero, headed their way back to Izuku's house. What a day it had been. Izuku? His mom answered the door, I hope you behaved well. Thank you for everything, Yagi. All Might was in his lanky form to avoid attention and save energy, anything, Inko. It was fun to have him around all day. Don't you have him all day in school? Inko asked. The school took up most of his day. Inko knew what he was referring to, but she just liked to tease him. She hadn't changed a bit. All Might gave out an awkward chuckle, that's different. I know it is, the oven started to beep loudly, catching her attention for a moment before turning back to face All Might. Would you like to stay over for dinner? Would love to, All Might wasn't going to miss a chance to eat more of Inko's fabulous food. It was too good to pass up. He would rather have her food than his microwaved meal. Izuku grabbed All Might's hand. Come on, I want to show you something. All Might let himself be dragged into the house by his son, show me. Yeah, you're going to laugh. Inko watched her 2 boys rush past her and into the house. Her eyes were filled with pure joy and her smile said more than enough. She was glad, extraordinarily happy, that they got along. All Might accepted Izuku as his son as soon as he knew and Izuku slowly warmed up to him. In the past, she feared they wouldn't get along or something worse. Except that wasn't the case. The two adored each other. Izuku's voice was heard throughout the house, the food was burning. How do you turn off the oven? All Might's voice came right after Izuku's. Inko giggled before running to the kitchen, I'm coming. The end. Thanks for watching my video and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description, see you next time, till then sayonara.